systems nominal.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I'd like to introduce you to a little something here. This is my warmaul. There are many like it, but this one is mine. This one is coming from the fine folks at Mechbay over in Ohio. I interviewed one of the two people responsible for that, Jarom Svensom. He and his brother. I interviewed him back in, actually, when was that? December of last year, actually. It's been a little while. He mentioned during that interview that they were planning on making these kinds of half model kit, half action figures based on classic Western mech style designs, and they are now in production. All for a full 3D print available for purchase on their Etsy store. I'll have the link in the description, as you can imagine. This is one of the first wave models that just come out. Yeah. You gotta know, I had to go with the warmaul. I mean, look at this damn thing. There's also the Needler, the Notre Dame, and the Skullface. Three guesses what they're inspired by, but, legally distinct from, obviously. But this is one of the two large-scale ones. The Needler and the Notre Dame are on the smaller side. The Needler specifically is, how big is this thing? Does it say anywhere here? Okay, I can't see exactly. This thing here is 19 centimeters tall, weighs a third of a kilogram. That's, 7.5 inches and 11 ounces for those of you who count your weights and measurements wrong. No judgment. So suffice to say, this thing's a beast in terms of size and weight compared to a lot of model kits that I've done. The only ones I've got that compare, I've got a couple of ones that compare in terms of size, including like the White Glint that I did, the Armor Core 4 one. But in terms of weight, this thing, it's like 3D printed plastics and resin. There's no like injection plastics or anything like that. So this thing, you could probably drop this thing on the ground. In fact, what the hell? Stress test. No problem. Nothing comes off. It's all very well designed and designed to be interchangeable. That's one of the great things about these ones. The way it works, you get a box. This box. Well, let's see if I can get a version with the lights not completely blinding it. This box here. It's a little bit out. They'll put the picture on screen. The box itself comes just regular white. They were nice enough to wrap it in a good amount of plastic just to make sure it was nice and waterproof, which is nice. On the inside, they were also nice enough to throw in a little extra gift here, along with a note. Enjoy this gift for being an early order. May this mech serve your regiment well in the distant world of Quebec, the Mechbay team. Nice guys. So what they did include is a bunch of stickers. Nice ones too. All the Jarom's designs here of all the different mechs, plus the alternate shapes, which armor shapes, which is something I'll discuss here. Plus, the actual company logo and everything like that, which is pretty nice. And a nice little envelope as well. The box itself was blank, but it came also with a pair of stickers that you could put on the front just to have a nice little display box, as well as on the back here, the kind of like back information. This one has, like warmaul, large frame, 3D printed action figure kit, 1/56 scale, that's 28 millimeter, 28 internal frame parts, 56 armor and weapon parts, all different, separated into their own little sprues here. And there's a nice little comparison, the size thing, silhouette there. Includes one GI Power Armor miniature. This little guy here. Cute little boy. Which I always appreciate. Some of my favorite models I have included like a pilot or something like that. It makes it really good for figuring out the kind of scale you're working on. To really kind of, see it. So if you put this guy right here up against here, you can really see exactly what kind of scale this thing's at, compared to what is ostensibly maybe a little bit bigger than a regular human simply because of the power armor taking up space. So inside the box you have the different sprues. You have the internal resin and plastic sprues. I will say, they do mention this in the instructions, which are available online, so you can look at them anytime you want and see if what you're in for before buying, which is always nice, something I mentioned during that interview I did with Jarom. They do mention that certain parts are going to require a little bit of elbow grease to get out of there. This is different from a lot of model kits that I've done in the past. Those ones were in, plastic sprues. You just take your little pliers and just snip, 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 and you're usually pretty good to go. Here, it's 3D printing. So while there's a lot of stuff that's like, spaghetti string, you just pull it apart with your bare hands, and that's fine, There are other aspects of it, like the arms and legs were particularly tough for me because they had these support structures that are built in to help the resin kind of like take the right shape and keep it while during creation. And those ones required me to pull a lot to try and get them loose. So it is mentioned in the instructions, so it's not going to be a surprise, but it was a surprise to me just how much I had to torque at them. But luckily they're solid enough that no damage occurred. I didn't break a single piece out of all of these things, which, considering some of them are kind of small, especially for this little guy, this is actually pretty impressive. This thing is built solid. If you're the kind of person who has kids or pets or something like that, and you're afraid of your model kits getting knocked over or damaged, I mean, like I showed, again, well, obviously nothing's foolproof, but again, something to demonstrate. So I can show it off here. This is what the structure here looks like. You can see here the arm mount here. And here, the armor just snaps on. Like that. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, all the way to the top. And it holds together really, really well. Even without the armor, the skeleton itself stands up very well once it's assembled, at least once the legs are assembled. And the whole thing, one of the great things about it is that they come with not only alternate parts, like this is the alternate center torso, it comes with an extra laser built into it. You've also got like the alternate side torso, alternate back torso with nice little nuclear insignia on it. In this case, it's on the top, as you can see there. Got all fusion reactor. The ones that you also have different weapons that you can acquire. So I've got two different versions of these big ass guns that you can stick on the front here, like these, versus the more sleek models that I have currently installed, as you can see there. And the cool thing about these is that nothing's screwed in or glued in, unless you actually want to. You can just pull it out. Each one of these things, you install one of these little pegs right here into it, and that way you can just slip them in, call it a day, just like that. And the other great thing, not only does each model come with its own alternate armor and its own alternate weapons, within the same size class, you can swap out anything you want. It all fits together exactly the same way. Each of these pieces just snaps onto the appropriate spot on the internal skeleton, and if you happen to have both, the warmaul and the skull face, well, there you go. You can have a maul face or a war skull or whatever the hell you want to call it. You can create your own, bizarre Frankenmechs if you want. And not to mention, given that others, new models are going to be coming up in the next waves, I mean, there's plenty of stuff you can create from there. You're not restricted to any particular size. And also, there's things, aside from being like great display pieces, and also, being cool action figures, they're eminently posable, probably more so than a lot of model kits, because, again, those ones tend to be a bit flimsy sometimes, and, often require glues or stuff like that just to keep their shape if you, not going to play around with them too much. These ones, you can just move them around pretty much to your heart's content. Move the legs around. The ball joints are made up of these kind of like, as I said, 3D printed resin, and it is very kind of like flexible, so you just like the harder elements here for the actual ball joints and the socket. Well, I mean, it's not so much the ball joint, it's the socket that's the flexible part. But you just like stick it on there, and it just stays on really well, and it's very much keeps that flexibility, which is really, really cool. Yeah, just move these around. And the cool thing about this is that, as I mentioned, this is 1/56 scale, 28 millimeter. When they mention 28 millimeter, they mean miniatures. If you want to do some miniatures wargaming at that scale, hello, you just got yourself a whole new mini you can stick on the table. If I'm not mistaken, what did he say? Jarom answered one of the Twitter messages that I sent out about this when I finished putting it together here. He mentioned that it was about the size of a Imperial Knight model for tabletop 40K. So yeah, if you're playing 40K and you have that kind of scale in mind for your wargaming, I mean, hey, this is a pretty good investment right there. Beyond that, I like the color, I like the texture, Obviously, I went for the matte green because, obviously, I'm a big fan of the whole mil-spec look. Yeah, I'm probably going to end up giving it a nice little paint job, too. Like, camo paint job or something like that. Just to really, emphasize it. Maybe, like, color in the lenses on the lasers and stuff like that. Maybe do a little something with a missile launcher here on top. Of which there's another one, so if I want to, I can, again, just mix and match them, which is great. There's another sensor boom here, a smaller one for you want to be a bit more subtle about that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, and obviously you have your little guy here. Even came with a little paper clip. I didn't end up using it because I liked it as just standing as it is there, like there. But you have a little paper clip that comes with the box that you can just thread through here, stick out through the hole, and then just attach your miniature onto it. Just so you can have, like, flying version, because these things, obviously jetpacks and stuff like that, jump jets, which is pretty awesome when you think about it. And each one of these models comes with its own little miniature like that, so, added bonus right there. Yeah, I mean, I think if there's any improvements I could say, I will say this. This is definitely, if you've ever done a lot of Gunpla modeling, you know what it's like to have a box full of, like, leftover sprues and stuff like that. It's a bit of a mess, but at least it's pretty contained. You have little bits of plastic sometimes. This one was a bit more messy because, as I said, there's a lot of support materials, and the sprues are, like, a bit more... How should I put this? Suffice to say, it's a bit more of a mess to clean up afterwards, so be prepared for that. And if there's any improvements, I would say, is that in the instructions, it would be nice if they indicate... The instructions are step-by-step, so, you're not going to get lost. But I think it would, save a bit of time if they mentioned on which sprue each component is when it, comes up as necessary. It wasn't difficult to find them because the instructions are in color and stuff like that, so it's actually very easy to see which are the indications for what's the support stuff that gets snapped off and what's the actual component. So that was good. And I will say that when I snapped off there was very little, like shaving or, trimming necessary, except for the obvious, like, taking off the little stringies and stuff like that from the 3D printing left over, or from, that came off from the sprues. But, in terms of, like, defects, everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. So, for something like your first wave, your first, versions of these things, they, frankly, hit it right out of the park. Everything fit together very nicely. There's just maybe, like, one or two places maybe they can make a few little adjustments, but aside from that, there was, like, a few things that were a bit hard to put together, as I said. There's, like, the first one, the waist. That one I had to really, like, push down hard to get the two pieces that make up the waist inside the skeleton to really, snap together. And I think there was this little gray part here, part of the rear torso. That one, pushing that into there, that was difficult. But, in the end, everything fit together just fine. So, yeah, the warmaul, part of Wave 1 of the Mechbay action figure models. I mean, I should probably get all of them at some point, but, for now I'm going to stick with this one, give it a nice little paint job, stuff like that. As I said, the link will be in the description for the website, as well as which will contain the links for their catalog and for their eBay store. Let's see, the warmaul itself retails for $65.88 Canadian. Don't know exactly how much that is in US. The skull face is $73.21. It's a bit more plastic. If you're looking for something a bit more on the budget, the Needler is the cheapest one for $51.22 Canadian. Again, don't know how much that is US, but you guys will figure it out. And I am really looking forward to what these guys come up with next. Jarom is a great artist when it comes to this stuff, and he has a whole range of different settings and different styles of mechs that he's been doing. He's been doing this whole thing of after the whole Catalyst to Battletech Gothic thing. He's decided, okay, no, this is how you redesign mechs for different settings, and he's been creating art for different classic battle mechs, redesigned along for an actual like medieval setting or an anime setting or diesel punk setting. The kind of different looks and loadouts that those kinds of things would have that be appropriate to the setting, which is probably a bit more than Catalyst had thought of when doing that. But in any case, I recommend checking this out. If you're the kind of person who, like me, likes to build these things as much just, for display as to just handle them and have some fun with them, which is more than I can say for a lot of Gunpla models, which tends, again, to be a bit more on the flimsy side. Yeah, I'd say go check this out. If you're a fan of this whole, real robot style, Western style, which is I know a lot of it came from Japan, but bear with me. It's what it's called. Deal with it. If you're a fan of that, I mean, going with the designs from a guy who calls himself Real Mech Is Love is probably going to be the right direction for you. In any case, I've been Zero Sum. Thank you for watching. Again, this is my warmaul. There are many like it, but this one is the one that's going to be fucking shooting you with particle cannons for fun. I'll see you all next time. Buy their shit.
All primary objectives complete. Mission successful.